and I look across where the creek runs. On the other hill, there's a deer that I was in there to shoot. I called him the mess. He was a mess of antlers. There's just points everywhere. I think he had 22 scoreable points. I look across, and there he stands with a doe about a half a mile from me. And the deer were coming by, but not. I had my eye on one deer in particular, and that was him. And I knew I had bumped him off, so I didn't really think that I was going to get a crack at him. There's hardly any breeze. I needed a south breeze. There's hardly any breeze. I'm starting to get hot. So by this time, I'm sitting in a short sleeve shirt, no gloves on, no face mask on, baseball cap, and I got white and purple socks sitting on my footrest of my stand because my feet are so hot. And it was about 1:45 in the afternoon. I had a doe come by, and I'm kind of dozing in and out. And I'm like, oh boy, there's a doe. And she's right in front of me. So I sit really still, and I slide my feet back so that I don't have these big white, purple feet sticking out there. And I look behind her. I kid you not, the mess is right behind her.
Big Buck Registry's Deer Hunting Podcast, episode number 241. Sean Asada, buying the American deer hunter's dream on a shoestring budget. Support for the Big Buck Registry and the Deer Hunt Podcast comes from Hunter's Blend Coffee. Awaken your hunt with coffee purchased directly from farmers around the world, creating jobs and alleviating poverty. Hunter's Blend Coffee, we're hunters too. Polar Works Coolers and the Chill Zone, specializing in the most durable, reliable thermal cups and coolers. Keep your drinks hot or cold in any element. Black Ash Outdoor Products reduce your risk of tree stand suspension trauma with the Tree Stand Wingman, the Tree Stand Emergency Descender System. The Enforcer. Take control of your odor footprint with your personal ozone generator. Covert Scouting Cameras. Remote cameras for hunting, wildlife, and security. The Horny Buck Seed Company. It's all about the freshest seed. Morris's Sporting Goods, a full line of sporting goods without the sales tax. And Big Buck merch. You can get cool, high-quality Big Buck t-shirts, long-sleeve t-shirts, and hoodies. And show support for this podcast by visiting www.bigbuckregistry.com/MERCH. Big Buck Registry is a virtual museum of hunting stories. We preserve a piece of Americana by interviewing and recording hunters about their hunts and experiences from across the country. And who knows, maybe we'll learn a thing or two along the way that'll help us take our hunt to the next level.
This is Bill Vale from PressureDeerPro.com, and you're listening to the Big Buck Registry's Deer Hunting Podcast.
Hello, this is Cuz Strickland with Mossy Oak, and you're about to listen to the podcast that I listen to 16 and a half hours nonstop. The Big Buck Registry is the best out there.
This is Johnny from Rockstarlet Outdoors. You're about to push play on my favorite podcast, The Big Buck Registry.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen and fellow predators. My name is Jay, and thank you for tuning in to the Big Buck Registry's Deer Hunting Podcast. For Dusty Phillips and Jim Keller and the entire staff here at the Big Buck Registry, welcome to this week's show. There are a couple things I'd like you to do for us if you could. If you would, please check us out on iTunes, subscribe, and leave us a review. With your help, we're going to try and push this show up the iTunes charts. I know we have a lot of listeners out there, and I need you to take some action. I need you to leave a review and subscribe to the show. If you do subscribe, that'll give you access and notification each and every week that a new show is released. You can also access this show in its entirety on YouTube, Stitcher, TuneIn Radio, iHeartRadio, Spotify, and Google Play. It's all right there for you to access on demand at your fingertips. Regarding the harness program, we have an ample supply of harnesses to give away from our volunteer donors. If you're in need of a full-body harness, please send an email to jay@bigbuckregistry.com. If the American dream is to own your own house, then the American hunter's dream is to own your own piece of hunting real estate. But to achieve that dream, we are often faced with the burden of financing, credit, and income, especially for working the 9-to-5 job and living paycheck to paycheck. According to Sean Asada, despite these perceived challenges, Sean says you can do it. He did it, and he didn't have 2 nickels to rub together. He started with a 10-acre piece, then another 13 acres, sold those, then bought 80 acres, sold that land, and then bought 280 acres, all for himself to hunt. Sean explains how he devised his plan to own his own hunting land without breaking his blue-collar budget, We'll turn to our entire interview with Sean Asada in just one moment, but before we do, let's turn to Jim Keller for the Deer News.
For the Big Buck Registry, this is Jim Keller with the Deer News. And our first story this week, Burmese python devours white-tailed deer that weighed more than the python itself in Florida. This story is from the WFTS ABC News website and was reported by Kelly Basil. Wildlife biologists with the Conservancy of Southwest Florida shared a shocking python find in Collier Seminole State Forest on Thursday. An invasive Burmese python's eyes were a little bigger than its stomach when it decided to devour a white-tailed deer fawn. Officials say pythons have been known to kill and ingest large prey, and this was a record-breaking meal. Officials stumbled upon the python with the massive prey inside. The biologists removed the python out of the wild into an open area, and the python was stressed, so it pushed the deer out of its mouth. Biologists believe it is the largest python-to-prey ratio ever documented. The python was 31.5 pounds, and the deer was 35 pounds, 111% of the python's mass. The findings will be published in the March 2018 issue of the Herpetological Review. The python is an invasive species, and biologists are focused on the impact the python is having across the food chain. Since 2013, the Conservancy and its research partners have been conducting research to document the invasive Burmese python's biology and behavior in Collier County, including the tracking, removal, and necropsy of captured pythons. 5 hot locations to find more shed antlers. This story is from the Deer and Deer Hunting website and was reported by Mark Kaiser. To find more shed whitetail antlers, you need to look in antler hot locations where deer will frequent or use going from one spot to another. Here are 5 top areas to snoop for more bone in your backpack. Bedding and south-facing slopes. Whitetails may spend more than 50% of their winter months bedded to conserve precious calories. That means they are likely to shed their antlers while bedded. Scour favored bedding sites in thick woodlots, willow jungles, and even cattails. Keep in mind deer may shuffle bedding sites to take advantage of south-facing terrain for warmth. Feeding areas. When winter deer aren't bedded, they are feeding. Food plots, nearby agricultural fields, and favored browse areas should top your list of places to search. If you believe that there is any mast, such as acorns left from fall, walk those areas as well. On a large agricultural field, be sure to grid the area so you don't miss any antlers hiding in the stalk. Trails connect bedding and feeding areas. Walk all heavily used trails that go between these zones. Look for trails that are now snow or mud packed. Start at either a feeding or bedding area and backtrack. If you see spur trails, follow those as well, since whitetails alter daily travel routes depending on wind and paranoia. Fences. Fences crisscross whitetail country, causing deer to jump them daily. This jar to the body can often dislodge antlers ready to drop. Follow trails to and from fences and then walk fence lines, since deer don't always follow trails religiously. If you're lucky, you'll discover a matched set of horns resting alongside a shimmering 5-wire fence. Rugged land. Like fences, rugged country causes deer to jump, bound, and leap. These various actions create a jarring impact that can also jettison antlers. Look for gullies, steep crossings, ditches, and even logs that deer may have to navigate. You literally can find a shed deer antler anywhere. They've been found by people driving down a road and spotted in the burrow ditch. Nevertheless, these 5 areas will definitely be top producers if you comb them diligently. Hunter who is charged with homicide after mistaking woman for a deer has case dismissed due to technicality. This story is from the Outdoor Hub website as a follow-up to a story we did previously. The case in which a New York hunter was charged with shooting and killing a woman after mistaking her for a deer has been dismissed. You may recall the case from the previous Outdoor Hub article in which Thomas Jadlowski, 34, mistook Rosemary Bilquist for a deer while she was walking her dogs and shot her in a field behind her home. Jadlowski was originally charged with second-degree manslaughter and hunting after shooting hours. In the latest development of the case, WKBW reports Chautauqua County Judge David Foley granted an appeal by the defense to dismiss the charges because the grand jury was never instructed on a lesser charge of criminally negligent homicide. Jamie Bilquist, husband of Rosemary Bilquist, isn't fazed by the ruling and ultimately believes Jadlowski will be brought to justice. Several companies boycott the NRA while others continue business as usual. As I write this on Thursday, March 1st, an attempted boycott is underway for Apple and Amazon since they continue to carry the NRA TV channel on their video streaming services. In addition, FedEx has also come under fire for not severing its ties with the NRA. The NRA has come under fire in the aftermath of the horrific Florida school shooting in which 17 students lost their lives. The NRA has defended guns and gun rights and has done so on the NRA TV channel and elsewhere that weapons are not the problem. Other companies have ended discount programs for NRA members. They are as follows: Delta Airlines, United Airlines, rental car companies, Hertz, National, Enterprise, Alamo, and Avis, Wyndham Hotels, MetLife Insurance, Paramount RX, Starkey Hearing, and Chubb Insurance, First National Bank, which offered the NRA Visa card, Simply Safe Home Security, Symantec, which makes Norton Antivirus and LifeLock, TrueCar Automobile Sales Website, and Wild Apricot Website Hosting, Allied Van Lines, and North American Van Lines. Dick's Sporting Goods is no longer selling assault rifles and will not sell guns to anyone under 21. Walmart won't sell guns and ammo to people under 21 and is no longer selling items that resemble assault rifles on their website. Companies who currently continue to associate with the NRA include Apple, Amazon, Google, FedEx, Vanessa Wines, Hotel Planner, Lockton, eHealth, Medical Concierge Network, Life Insurance Central, Manage Your ID, and Lifeline Screening. The NRA defended itself Saturday in a statement while condemning firms that have decided to cut off their relationship with the organization. The law-abiding members of the NRA had nothing at all to do with the failure of that school's security preparedness, the failure of America's mental health system, and the failure of the National Instant Check System, or the cruel failures of both federal and local law enforcement. Maybe what some of these companies need to do is put their money where their mouth is and offer their employees inexpensive and full benefit programs, so if they suffer from a mental illness that might cause them to turn violent, they are able to get the help they need before they do something terrible. Maybe Walmart could stop selling the violent video games that I'm sure make them much more revenue than assault weapon toys, so troubled kids won't be exposed to games that introduce them to the concept of shooting people with assault rifles. Please join me in my own boycott as I change my rental car to Dollar Rental Car in April and make it a point to avoid those companies no longer offering their business arrangements with the NRA. They are just grabbing publicity that will do nothing to address the real issue. That concludes this week's edition of the Big Buck Registry's Deer News. For links to the stories featured this week, please check our show notes at www.bigbuckregistry.com. If you have any ideas for future topics or have any questions about any of these topics, please email me at jim@bigbuckregistry.com. For the Big Buck Registry, this is Jim Keller with the Deer News.
Well, thank you to Jim Keller for the Deer News. Without further ado, here is Sean Asada. Sean Asada, welcome to the Big Buck Registry's Deer Hunting Podcast. What's happening?
Awesome day out, man. Beautiful weather. How are you?
Watching snow melt, brother. It's just one of those beautiful things. Turkey season's around the corner, and I can smell it.
Yeah, I've got the itch to get out myself.
Yeah. But there's also, the other aspect of this, and where people are starting to think food plots and getting stuff set up, and they're
no doubt. And with shed antlers dropping daily, I have an itch to get out and do some more of that too.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I'm kind of coming off of my ice fishing, shed hunting, coyote hunting type thing. Not that I ever stopped coyote hunting, of course, but the early spring way of life.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't coyote hunt much, but I would love to get more into it. Seeing them just drives me nuts. It gives you an itch to get out there and be like, I want to get him.
Right, yeah. Sean, we wanted to talk today a lot about buying a piece of property. It's part of the American dream to own a house. It's part of the American hunter's dream to own their own piece of property. Problem is, buying property is expensive. It costs a lot of money to get in. Mortgages are at play. A lot of times it's just the wealthier folk that get to do this and play in this playground. But everybody really wants their own piece of property, right?
Absolutely. I mean, if you're a hunter and you think about it nearly 365 days a year, like a lot of us do, that's a dream. And it's a viable dream. It can be a goal, and it can be attained.
Right. And what I think, and we're going to get into your whole story in just a second, but I think it's fascinating that none of that mattered to you, and that you found a way to get it done with short money. And as we've discussed, you didn't have two nickels to rub together, but still, and through real blue collar jobs, you were still able to buy a piece of hunting property that you call your own.
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely. Right. I mean, I didn't grow up with hardly anything at all. Originally, I'm from northern Iowa. I was born in California, but I don't remember any of that because we moved to Iowa when I was very young. But then we moved to northern Iowa, and I grew up in the country. I was a single mom household, and she worked her butt off. I had a couple of brothers, and my mom provided a roof over our head and food. And other than that, we were left to, I mean, don't get me wrong, great relationship with my mother still to this day, but we were left to fend for ourselves. If we wanted something, we had to figure out a way to go and get it. And so as a kid, you're not in control of your thoughts as much as you are as an adult, but I just watch people out there on tractors and, the neighbors with, let's say, a loader moving stuff around. And I just could watch them all day. I mean, I'm talking little kid, kindergarten.
Okay.
I could just watch equipment all day.
Gotcha. So was when you were a kid, was hunting like an aspect of life that you wanted to participate in, or did you have more to think about back then?
It was the outdoors.
I
mean,
okay.
Granted, my time outdoors now is pretty much just hunting related, except for in the summer. We have a boat and we go out family boating, but outside of that, it was just the outdoors. I grew up in the country, so I never said I was bored to my mom. I take that back. I learned to say I was never bored to my mom because it was either, well, clean or go outside. And so I wouldn't say I was bored because I surely didn't want to clean. So I'd go outside and, I'd fish and we'd make forts and do whatever I could to be outside. It was just in me. My neighbor hunted, and that was just the seed. And I was too young, but I was just the seed that was planted that I just want to get out and hunt. And that's kind of where it developed.
Okay. Was there an influence in your life that got you into hunting other than watching your neighbor? And what's your earliest recollection of a hunt?
My earliest recollection of a hunt was I wasn't even in kindergarten. I was probably 4 years old, and parents were still married at the time. And my dad hit a buck with his car and just destroyed his car. And that thought was like, man, you can go out and like hunt these things. Like you can really go and shoot them, and you can get one of these things and eat it. Yeah, I want to do that.
Yeah, I want in on that.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
It's crazy. I mean, some kids are born with family members that hunt, parents that hunt, and they don't really get it in their blood.
Right.
And myself, I didn't really have too much hunting directly influenced on me, but I wanted to do it anyway.
Right. Yeah, and I can relate. My grandfather was a hunter, but he didn't hunt a ton when I got to know him. He was a little older and wasn't nearly as active. He'd go out, but he'd take me fishing a lot when I was a really young kid. That was his thing. As you can envision, introducing a kid to the outdoors, you take him fishing first, typically. And then you introduce a BB gun, and then you start to introduce some hunting later when they can start to understand some of the other concepts. And assuming that you can overcome the boredom aspect of what hunting could bring to a kid.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, or an adult.
Or an adult for that matter. Yeah. If you're not seeing game, which is to a kid, that's what I'm here to do. But to an adult, there's many other aspects to that, whether it be just pure peace and quiet and removed from daily life to actually I need the adrenaline rush. So So there's a lot of different aspects to hunting, but my dad wasn't much of a hunter, so we didn't go. But there was always, I had a couple friends that always got to go, and they'd tell us the stories about how they get on their deer hunt. I was so envious of how I wasn't doing that. So I begged my dad to take me, but I never got to that level that they seem to be able to actually kill a deer and hold the antlers and feel the fur and got the deer. And I always wanted that, but my dad just wasn't a hunter, and my grandfather.
You nailed it,
right?
Yeah,
I wanted a piece of that.
Yeah,
and that was early on, right?
Yeah, I had friends that hunted, and coming from, by the time I got in third, fourth grade, when my other friends were going out hunting, by that time, a single parent household, and my mom was working all the time, and rightfully so. I mean, paying bills is number one, and I had friends that go hunting, and I was just so jealous, and I wanted to figure out a way to go and do it.
Right.
And finally, eventually, that came along.
Right. All right. So you going through life as a kid, you're kind of feeling this desire to get out, and you get to your adulthood, and you're faced with, okay, I can go hunting, but I really want to own a piece of property. Problem is, I don't have any money to do it, but you figured it out. So tell us your story about how this whole concept of where you are today, where you own a piece of property that you hunt and manage, that you own, it's yours. You can do whatever you want with it. Where did that story begin?
It really starts off as a kid. You know, if you want something, you have to figure out a way to get it. And some people are, and this is awesome, I don't downplay it one bit on what people can do with their lives. Sometimes people are born on third base in the major leagues, and we can't do anything about it. You know, kind of like sitting at a poker table. Mm-hmm. So you work with the cards that you are dealt. So I just thought, you know what, I've got to, and granted this, it wasn't so philosophical, but I've got to figure out a way to get this done with anything in life. And I remember filling out FAFSA information for college and college applications and scholarship applications and trying to figure those things out. I was just in a household where if you wanted something, you had to figure out how to do it. And so that is even going through college. You know, at junior college, I wasn't, eventually I did go to a university, but I was not going to a university right off the bat. I saved money and I worked full time over the summer for a manufacturing plant. And the first year of college, I drove back and forth to a community college. I took 16 credit hours, which is not too crazy. I think 12 is officially full time. And those 16 credit hours I took on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Okay. And I had to drive 50 minutes to go to class. And so it just came down to work ethic. And I'd work from 6 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and then work from 6:30 a.m. until noon on Saturdays. So it basically came down to a work ethic. I had the work ethic. I just had to figure it out.
So growing up, anything you wanted in life typically wasn't to go to mom and dad, said, Mom, Dad, buy me this, get me that. You had to work for it. You had to figure out a way to get it, and it wasn't coming financially from your parents or other relatives.
That's right. I remember the very first car I bought. You know, my mom did help me out there. It was $600 as a piece of junk, and I paid her back. I had a job landed before I turned 16, and that is how exactly. You hit it. I had to figure it out.
All right. So you worked for it. You had to earn it. You had to find a solution to what your desires, the things you wanted in life, and it certainly wasn't going to be handed to you. You had to go get it.
Yeah. Yep. All right. Exactly.
All right. So so it started way back, obviously, and that you knew you were going to have to work for it, but still you had to figure out that I want a piece of my own hunting land, not just a house, not just a place to live, but a hunting property. And that, to a lot of people, that's like a luxury item. You know, that's disposable income. That's well beyond what most people would normally do. However, there is a priority where, okay, if you make that a priority in your life, that you institute it into your life.
Yep.
When did that become your goal?
It had been, so getting out, working full time after I graduated and got a full time job. We bought just a small, modest house, my wife and I, and, below our means. I'm always a guy about living below your means because you got to save for a rainy day. You never know what the future holds. Right. So we just had a small, modest house. And when it comes to money, it's always one of two things. It's either an income problem or it's an outgo problem. Right. So if you've got the outgo problem handled, living below your means, pinching pennies, you're already working a full-time job, maybe your girlfriend, your wife's already working a full-time job, you possibly have an income problem. So, and we had good jobs. There's no doubt about it. I mean, they weren't six-figure jobs by any stretch of the imagination. Mm-hmm. It's just we had nice, stable jobs that we could count on. As long as we did a good job, we know our jobs would be there. Okay. So I decided, hey, I need to make some more money if I'm going to have down payment for some land. Okay. And we're already saving every month. All right. That old adage, pay yourself before you pay your bills. Put money in savings. Right. and then live off the rest.
All right. And I want to illustrate here that, and maybe I'm wrong, but you're not a financial planner by trade. This is not your job.
No, not at all.
Okay.
I'm just a tightwad and a figure outer.
Okay. All right. Yet I'm hearing that these lessons that I would often hear from a financial planner. So you figured this out on your own probably because of the way you grew up, right?
Yeah, you're right. When you're forced to do something, when you're backed into a corner, you've got to figure your way out. Well, you got two choices. You could sit there in that corner, or you can figure out how to get out of that corner.
Okay. All right. Right. All right. So you buy a modest house. You have average incomes. You have two incomes going in your household, living below your means, and this is your strategy for your finances in your household.
Yeah. Even to this day.
Even to this day, you live this. You live and breathe this lifestyle. This is what you do. And the jobs you have are not 6-figure income jobs. It supplies your household what you need, yet still doesn't really sound like there's a lot of extra income to go buy your dreamland so you can have your hunting area all to yourself.
Right. No, there wasn't. So, I had to figure out a way to bring in some more money.
Okay. All right. So how'd you do that?
Well, opportunity, you have to have your eye open for opportunity. It's kind of like buying a vehicle. I mean, it could be as simple as, let's say, a Chevy Cavalier. You don't see opportunity until you keep your eye open for it. And so you buy your Chevy Cavalier, or you buy your S10 truck. Well, once you see them and you buy one, you see them all over the place. Right. And that's the way opportunity is as well. And so I had an acquaintance that had a auto dealer's license. And here in Iowa, that gives, if you have an auto dealer's license, you get access to special auctions.
Right. Okay. So what you're talking about is the reticular activator. Once you're aware of it, you see it everywhere.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yep. And so he had a dealer's license and he bought wrecked vehicles. And so I asked him to find me a wrecked Toyota Tundra. And he's like, tell you what, here is the auctions I have access to. We typically use online auctions. And here's my username, here's my password. Just throw me a bone if you find one you like.
Okay.
So I found one I liked, and it was wrecked. And believe it or not, while it was in the body shop getting fixed, he had access to a couple body shops that worked at a pretty reasonable rate. So while I was in the body shop getting fixed, I saw this ad in the local newspaper, a guy looking for a Toyota Tundra. And I thought, So I ran to what I was going to have into this truck for money. And then I looked to see what the market had for Toyota Tundras out there. And I was like, I think I can make some money on this truck. So it came out of the body shop and I drove it for a few weeks. I called the guy. Hey, did you find a truck? No, still looking for one. As a matter of fact, I've got one. I'd consider selling it. So I sold it and made some money on it. And I thought, I want to do a couple more of these.
Okay.
All right. And that's what I did. And so the guy that had the dealer's license, he helped me find a vehicle here and there that I was looking for. And then I had a body shop that I'd pay the guy to fix them at a reasonable rate. And you got to be smart about it. Just like anything else, you want to know where the demand is. Mm-hmm. So I bought vehicles that I would like to drive myself. And so it's not like I even bought 24 of these things, and turned them over and sold them. It was just, I bought a few of them and made a few $1,000. Well, that few $1,000 went straight to savings.
Yeah.
And that helped. And then he got a job opportunity because he had, this dealer's license on the side with another guy. So he had a job opportunity. He took the job out of state. I no longer had access to those auctions, but I still needed some extra money. In the meantime, we're saving money every month. Got a few $1,000 we've put into savings from the vehicles. And I decided, I need to get a part-time job. So I went and sold appliances, full commission, after work and on the weekends. And sometimes it was famine. I'd come home, I wouldn't sell a thing.
Right.
Then other times it was feast.
Right.
And all that money went straight to savings. And it was still just a few $1,000.
Gotcha.
And what we did with that money was I just Googled, Iowa land for sale, because that's where I live. I live in Iowa. Iowa land for sale. And looked through a few websites and my wife and I decided, it was on a weekend, it was Saturday, Sunday, we're going to drive down here, we're going to look at a couple properties. And they were small. I mean, the properties for sale were, 9 to 20 acres. And so we drove down there, had a few thousand in savings. Granted, we drove down there just looking. And by the time we left, we had an offer on a piece of property.
Okay.
And that is how the first one got bought.
So where are you at in that process where so you worked a second job, all that money went to save for down payment. So did you have and you found a piece of property you wanted, you made an offer.
Yeah.
But did you have enough to pay for the whole thing in cash, or was there some financing that needed to be put into play?
Yep. Financing into play. I mean, even to this day for me, it's still financing comes into play. If you have credit, mm-hmm. and you have savings, just even a modest savings, and you're living below your means, the bank will give a guy more money than a guy should take. And so the bank, getting financing was easy, because the bank, they want to finance you to the hill.
Yeah.
They want to give you everything they can give you, to a certain point, because they want interest on their money. Mm-hmm. So it was financing. I don't remember what we put down for percentage. I want to say we only put down 25% probably.
Okay. All right. Which, if compared to buying a house, that's a lot of money. That's a large percentage. You can get no money down on if you have a house, but 25% on a piece of property might not be so easy. What are we talking about in dollar figures for your first one?
Oh, I think the first one was less than $50,000.
Okay. So your piece,
so, we were only talking maybe $15,000 we put down.
Okay. All right. So you had a $50,000 piece of property. How many acres were you looking at?
And it was small. It wasn't even 10 acres.
10 acres, $50,000, and you had to come up with $15,000 of your own money.
Yep. Yeah. I want to say the property itself was like $45,000. And when you think about that, if you do the math, you're like, oh my gosh, it's $5,000 an acre. But this was a different area. This was an area that was getting developed into vacation homes and a private lake. And right now in Iowa, it's not unheard of to pay $5,000 for recreational land. At that time, it was unheard of, but this was a little different animal just because it wasn't strictly recreational ground.
Okay. And at that point, were you thinking, this is going to be my deer hunting spot, this 10 acres?
I was.
You were?
Yeah,
okay.
This is going to be a deer hunt spot. We'll build a cabin here. We got the private lakes. We'll do some fishing. It still hadn't grown into this. I'm going to have a couple 100 acres of deer hunting ground to myself. The dream had still not grown that big yet. It's amazing what we are capable of as humans that we don't even know we're capable of.
Right. So 10 acres is not that much property.
No.
Right.
No, it's not. The deer hunting at the time was awesome.
For deer hunting, that's a very small parcel, right?
It is. Yep. At the time that we first bought it, and granted it got developed, and the deer hunting has since taken a hit. It's still not bad because there's so much timber in the area. But at the time, I want to say the first couple of years that I had it, I saw a 180 on there twice. Neighbor missed a 200 just a few hundred yards away. I mean, it was really good deer hunting.
Okay. So you were able to figure out, did you know it was a good deer hunting spot before you engaged, or were you just taking a chance?
I knew it was pretty good.
Okay.
If you can find enough timber in Iowa, it doesn't mean that it's going to be lights out deer hunting, but it does mean that you're going to see deer.
Okay. So you're looking at timber, and you're looking at, and it's, again, 10 acres is for deer hunting, for land. That's a small parcel. You're looking for a house to be on, 3 to 5 acres is pretty normal.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe
right. It was really small. Right. And I just knew if you want to, and I've hunted some small spots. Mm-hmm. I used to do an urban hunt, but I've hunted half-acre lots.
Right.
And so you can hunt small areas. It was just a matter of at least I will have a place I can hunt if I need one.
Right. And it's mine.
Yep.
And I I guess that's where I wanted to point out here. That's why I was driving home the whole concept that this is a small piece. You don't need a big piece.
No, if your goal is just you want a place to hunt where you don't have to have permission, you're going to go hunt. You don't have to worry about landowner and this and that and the other thing. It doesn't take a big area. If you want to shoot giant bucks and that's all you're giving yourself a choice to do, then you're going to have to look at it a little differently at some point.
Right. So backing up just to go through this process is that you worked an extra job part-time to come up with $15,000 to put a down payment on a piece of property that you're going to finance.
Yep.
So that you could have your own deer hunting land. How long did it take you, based off the income that you had in your household plus your extra part-time job, that was how you're going to earn money for the down payment for a deer hunting spot? How long did it take you to accumulate your 25% down?
Oh, for that $15,000, gosh, we made so little at the time. It seriously probably took us like 2 years just to save that.
Okay. All right. So
and that's not very much money. I mean, $15,000, don't get me wrong. I don't even spend $100 without thinking about it long and hard.
Right.
But it probably took us that long just to save $15,000.
Okay. But you set a goal. Was your goal $15,000 at that time? Was that I need $15,000?
I remember when we first got married, our goal was just to save $10,000. And I mean, literally just to have $10,000 in savings. That was our goal. And we hit that goal and we just kept saving and saving. And so it was never a written goal of, okay, when we have $25,000 in savings, we're going to go find a piece of property that we both can agree on. My wife doesn't even hunt. To this day, she still doesn't hunt.
Okay.
It was property to me has always been a smart purchase, an investment that I just so happens that I can hunt.
Right.
To this day, it's still that way to me.
Okay. So this was done on a part-time job outside of your normal everyday income.
Mm-hmm.
That was not a six-figure income to begin with. Living below your means. But you were still working. You got a initiation into buying and selling Toyota Tundras so that you could resell, and there must have been some cash generated from that as well.
Yep.
Right.
Yep. Exactly. So we're saving money just with our full-time jobs because we're living below our means.
Okay.
But we need to speed this process up.
Gotcha.
Because of the whole, if you don't have enough money, it's an income or it's an outgo problem.
Gotcha.
Well, in our case, it was an income problem. So I need to get some more income.
So you had to be hyper aware of a few things. Number one, you had to be hyper aware of what you were earning and had to be hyper aware of what was going out and what you needed to live for your family.
Yep.
Right.
And that all starts with a budget. You don't even have to be hyper aware. You could do that with simple math.
I say hyper aware because yes, it's simple math, but some people just don't even think about that. So you have to be aware of how much is coming in, how much you need each month to go out in order to just pay your bills. And then you have to bring it back. Like you have to, I have to live below this in order to make this work. And I'm going to need to hyper generate some additional income because I've got this piece set over here. And in order to achieve my goals of being able to buy property, I need to accelerate that process. I need to find extra income above and beyond what I currently have. I'm going to do that, in your case, by buying and selling Toyota Tundras, buying them cheaper and selling them for more, and doing some kind of a second job to save my down payment money for my first piece of property.
Yeah, what you think about, you will become. And so I constantly thought about, is getting ahead, quote unquote, so I could somehow find my own little slice of hunting property. And so that's constantly what I thought about, perusing online. You know, I'm positive you have hundreds, if not thousands of listeners out there that hop online just to look at properties, just to dream. And that is awesome. Right. That's where it all starts.
Right. So you get your first piece of property through a financial plan of your own, not as a financial advisor set you out or set forth for you, just your own plan. What did you, what was next? Okay. You got the money, you get the loan. What was the loan process like?
It's pretty simple. I mean, if you bought a vehicle on a loan or you bought a house on a loan, granted, real estate, the closing is quite a bit more a lot more complicated than buying a consumer item. But you go to the bank, and that's probably what I recommend first is you look at what you have in savings, you look at how long it's going to take you to get there, what you need in savings, and then you get pre-approved by a bank. And chances are, if you are fanatical about your finances, you already know what you can afford by using a simple calculation of how much money is it going to take down, and then hopping online or downloading an app of a mortgage calculator and putting in your interest, putting in your amortization, and figuring out how much it's going to cost you a month.
How much does it cost on so you had $15,000 down on a $50,000 piece of land. What was your monthly payment that you had to worry about after that?
I don't even remember. I want to say it was around $400 a month at the time. And it was, our lives changed so much. I want to say that it was on a balloon. It was like a 5-year balloon. So you can usually get lower interest rates when you do something like that. And people always think about, well, what am I going to do in 5 years if interest rates take off? And that's a valid question to ask. I haven't worried about it because my life has changed so dramatically in the last 10 years. It's changed so dramatically in the last 5 years. I don't typically worry about it too much. I'm just like, okay, what's my interest rate going to be locked in for 3 years or 5 years? Okay. And I'm not saying that's a good idea. I'm just saying that's what I've done.
Okay. So you weren't too worried about the interest rate or the terms that you were receiving.
Yeah, I was interested. Yeah, I mean, I was, because the bottom line monthly, that's what I cared about. I just wanted to make sure that my interest rate was going to be locked in for at least 3 years.
Okay.
Because our lives, with standard of living, and we get raises, and hopefully, if you've got kids, your daycare payments are going to go out the window once they go to school, and so usually dispensable income goes up as long as we don't change our standard of living or get into further debt.
Okay. All right. So you have a term of a balloon, which I believe means that you're going to need to pay that off at some point down the road. A balloon means that they're going to call for the balance.
Yeah. Usually what a bank yes, that is, if you're getting down to the nuts and bolts of it, that's exactly right. Usually the way a bank looks at it is they're going to refinance it with me in 5 years.
Right. All right. So they're looking to probably recast that at some point with you down the road. So, right. But the point is that you've made this purchase. You have terms that work within your household budget, and you're now the proud owner of a slice of hunter's heaven, right? Yeah. You now are part of the hunter's American dream, where you own a property that you can call and maintain and manage yourself as you wish.
Yeah. Run cameras on it, throw out some clover seed, rake it in with your old garden rake. That's exactly what I did.
All right. So what was that the plan? Was that okay? So hey, if we bought the property, then what? What's your plan right then and there?
My plan was to hunt it and kill a couple deer, and then my buddy of mine, he ended up buying the neighboring one over, and that was just a few acres also. And shortly after he closed on him and I went to the Boundary Waters fishing, and I remember we're paddling. Seems like for eons if you've ever paddling a canoe across, a 10,000 acre lake. But I'm like, hey, dude, what are we going to do next? And he's like, I don't know, buy some more. And I just kind of laughed at the time. But him and I still don't own land together to this day. But I didn't have a solid plan. All I knew at the time is I'm going to keep saving. I'm going to make this property better. And I'm going to keep my eye open for things that come along.
Okay.
And that's what happened.
All right. So you're not done yet. You're like, okay, this one's cool. I'm using it. I'm working out the plan. Did you have a management plan for that 10 acres? Were you going to plant food plots and hunt it, or were you still in development mode?
No, I was still a mudslinger.
Okay.
Meaning I'm just going to go hunt.
Okay.
I got my place. I can go hunt. I can tell you that today I am a much different hunter than I was at the time.
Okay. All right. So part of your story with the Toyota Tundra, that reminds me of my friend AJ, and I want to just go off on a quick tangent here. My friend AJ owns a really nice tuna fishing vessel. I mean, it's a yacht, right?
Awesome. I already like AJ.
AJ's great. Love AJ.
So do I.
And he's a good tuna fisherman, and but he takes it out on other trips. But to him, that boat was part of his life. And from day one, it was going to be a part of his life, except he didn't have the means, very much like you. Didn't make a ton of money, bartended a lot, very blue-collar worker. But here's what AJ did. AJ, who had a mechanical background, he understood how cars worked and boats worked and boat motors and all that kind of stuff. He was familiar with it. He would buy junks on the side of the road, fix them up, and resell them for profit. And each time he did, he took that profit and bought a bigger junker and continued to do that. He'd even buy trailers that nobody wanted, or take trailers that nobody wanted, buy boats. And each time he got it to a point where he was making more and actually was able to buy a boat that he kind of liked. And that became his fishing boat. It wasn't his ideal fishing boat, but it was a boat. But he continued to buy and sell boats on the side of the road because each time he had more and more cash. And over the last, I think it's 5 years, he's gone from an entry level, what I would consider a striper boat fishing vessel, to an entry level yacht that he can now use for tuna fishing, go deep overnights. And then even traded that one in. He sold that one and made a profit on that and went to an even bigger boat. So now he's living the wicked tuna lifestyle on one of the incredibly nice boat that he understands and maintains, double twin turbo diesel engines, and he can go deep and stay overnight and has beautiful cabins and high perches. And it is as nice as any tuna fishing vessel that you would find on Wicked Tuna, except that you have to understand how he got there. It started with him basically just buying a rowboat on the side of the road.
Yeah.
Very similar to your story.
Yeah, that's incredible. I mean, I love hearing stories like that. It's amazing what what luck is a lot different than some people. There is such thing as luck, but his came from hard work.
Right. Came from being smart, working hard, looking for opportunity, capitalizing on opportunity for profit with a goal in mind. Like someday I want that huge tuna boat, but I can't do it on the income I have. However, I can take a little bit of my money, invest in a little bit of a boat, and whatever I make from that, keep going and going and going.
Yeah. Opportunity comes dressed in overalls and looks a lot like work.
That's right. That's right. So back to your story. You did not stop at 10 acres. It sounded like that conversation you had with your neighbor in the boat kind of got your wheels turning. Like, well, maybe I don't want to stop. Where did you go from there?
Then the recession happened, and the recession was felt all over the place. Fortunately, my wife and I still kept our jobs, and the neighboring property ended up going back to the bank. And that was a little bit bigger. That was like 13 point some acres. And so I talked to my wife about it and hemmed and hawed for couple days, and I called the bank and went back and forth with the bank and made an offer. And sometimes banks just give things away. They didn't in this case. Sometimes they hang on to them, and my wife and I were able to buy the neighboring piece at quite a bit less than what was paid for it just a couple years prior. That was partially due to two things. One, it was bank owned, and two, the recession happened.
Gotcha. Okay. So you're building onto your acreage at this point. You're buying a neighboring property through opportunity, and the timing was intricate here.
Yeah, timing is always an intricate thing. And when you buy something and you make it better, whether it be a car, vehicle, boat, piece of land, I don't even look at it as, or even a dilapidated house. One doesn't go into it just to flip it and screw somebody out of money. Mm-hmm. What you're really doing is you're providing a better product, and you're reducing risk for the next person. If you can get awesome deer pictures on it, if you can put food plot on it and show the thing works, if you can buy a junky trailer or junky boat and make it a lot better, that elbow grease and that sweat equity, you didn't screw anybody out of anything. What you did is you eliminated risk for the next person, and you created a better product for them so they didn't have to do that work themselves.
Gotcha. Okay.
And so that's what we ended up keeping those pieces of property for a few years and don't own them anymore. The first one did not make any money on it. Be totally honest with you, didn't make any money on it. I don't really think I lost any money though either. I mean, I learned a ton about land ownership and forest reserve and taxes and putting in food plots with sweat equity and trenching in my own renting a trencher and pulling it behind my truck and going down there on Easter Day to go trench in my own electrical service and, hand cutting, getting up to tree roots and hand cutting my way through tree roots and buying my own bulk roll of electric wire and laying it back in there and burying it, all that good stuff.
Wow. All right. So you're in. You have to be all in at this point. You can't hire somebody to do it. You're your own construction guy at this point.
Yeah, I didn't have the money to hire it done.
Right.
So I wanted a spot where we could take a camper, and in order to have a spot to take a camper, I didn't want to run it off a generator. So I decided, well, I'm going to have to trench it in. So I went to Electrical Warehouse and bought this super long roll of electrical wire after consulting with a couple electricians on what I needed for gauge wire, and rented a trencher from a company here in town, went down there and took care of it.
Gotcha. Fascinating. And then you sold the property. So you kind of broke even on the first property. And I sold it to a friend. Okay.
Lives down there with his family to this day. Been down there to visit him.
Okay.
Beautiful, beautiful house and timber.
Okay. So that was a learning experience. And then the neighboring property, the was 13 acres or so. What did you do with that one?
Put a food plot on it, hunted it some more, and sold that one, and made a little bit of money on that one. I mean, I don't even think, I'm positive we didn't even make 10 grand on that.
Okay. All right.
But still made money. And in the meantime, we have a mortgage payment on it. So we're paying down the principal and therefore upping our equity.
Right.
So what a lot of people think about land is, oh, it's risky. Well, there is volatile land, like development land. If you want to be a giant player and make stacks of money and take huge risks, there's development land, and you can do that. Right. That is not my forte, and I don't feel comfortable doing that. But to me, farmland, modest recreational land, I don't look at it as risky at all. It's perceived as being risky. It's a commitment, but the risk doesn't bother me at all.
Okay. It seems unrisky to me, only because if you had to sell it in a pinch, you could most likely sell it for pretty much what you got for it, or pretty much what you paid for it.
Yep. The market determines value.
Right.
When stuff hits the market and you see an exorbitant price on it, if that price comes down or it gets sold maybe a couple months later, and you can look on your assessor site or go to your county courthouse and see what it sold for, nobody determines the market individually. Right. It is the market determines the market.
Right. And certainly the market, you talked about recession earlier when you bought that first piece or the second piece of property, that was predicated off of a housing bubble that burst. So that at that point, and housing can burst like anything. There are bubbles of all sorts. There was the .com burst. There was the real estate burst, and there's not all
commodities burst.
It's never completely safe, but certainly in general, property values increase annually, year over year.
Yeah, about 5 to 6% a year. What I consider land, recreational and farmland, is it's a non-liquid savings account. Your money's there.
Right.
You're paying it down. It didn't go anywhere. It's just not as liquid as sitting in a bank.
Right. Definitely not liquid. Definitely, I don't know. I'm not a financial advisor or anything like that. I don't play one on TV, but certainly probably there are other more risky, more aggressive investments that you could make and maybe make more money. But in general, real estate is safe. And I've certainly seen evidence that people who are the super wealthy actually go and buy land as a place to park their earnings as a safe net where they don't feel like, okay, I can put that over there. I can put my money over there and it won't decrease in value. It'll most likely increase in value. But I don't feel like I'm not at risk. I'm not at risk if I put my money over there.
Absolutely. There's a very famous quote out there that goes, don't wait to buy real estate. Buy real estate and wait.
That's an interesting perspective. I like that.
Because it's going to go up. I mean, it's going to go up.
Okay.
As long as the human population keeps going up, it's going to go up.
So 08, 09, that was approximately when the recession was. You bought that second piece of property through the recession.
Yep.
Then you sold them. What year did you sell them?
I don't remember exactly what year. I want to say it was about 2011.
Okay.
Because I shot my first, let's just say, and it's all a matter of perspective, but I shot my first big deer in, I believe it was 2010, and it was on that land.
Okay.
So I know I still owned it then, so we'd probably have to say 2011.
Okay. Did that have a correlation to you being your own land manager and doing the things that you wanted to do to grow bigger deer there? Because you could, A, keep other people off, and B, you could hunt and take the deer that you wanted and let the other ones grow.
The answer to that one is no.
Okay.
It was luck.
Pure luck. Okay.
Yeah.
Honest answer.
It was just a good area. It was a good area. Right. I mean, if a guy still wants to go shoot a 140-inch deer, even though there's a lot of pressure in that area, I could go and do it. Anybody could. And it's not even me. A guy could go and do it.
Gotcha. All right. And you have to ask the question because your mind kind of, so, well, did you have something to do with it, owning your own property? And the answer is, in your case, no. It was just pure luck. So that it's important, I think, to illustrate that even though you own your own piece of property, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to grow bigger deer there, but you happen to take one that you think had really not a whole lot to do with it, which is important to understand.
Yeah. Exactly.
So, all right. So you sell the second piece of property. You've sold the first piece of property. Now you don't own any land at that time, or at least I don't know if you did. You didn't say you bought any, but so
no,
you no longer have your own piece of property to hunt. What happens after that? Do you end up buying more land?
At that time, to this day, I still hunt a lot on permission.
Okay.
I still hunted on permission then. I'm positive I still hunted public ground then. So at that time, no, did not own any quote unquote hunting land.
Okay.
I got into the urban hunt where I live to kind of feed that need of continuing to have a place to hunt and more places to hunt. My wife and I wanted to build a house. The recession hadn't quite come back yet. Mm-hmm. So immediately after that, now keep in mind, this whole time, I'll say it one last time, this whole time we're still saving money, living below our means.
All right.
So, gotcha. And we're paying down the principal on that land. So we're saving money, paying down the principal, sell it. Savings is growing because we're still saving. We sell it, we have more equity in it, more money goes back into savings after selling it, pay a little bit of capital gains. And now you had some money that came from the sale of the land. In other words, you had your equity that by paying down your balance, plus you had the increase in value that on the second piece where you buy it or you sold it for more than what you bought it. So you've got some dollars coming out of this one that goes into your savings at that point. Yep.
Okay.
Exactly. That's right.
All right. And does that become the land fund? That's like when I decided to do this again, that's where that money's going.
Not at that time. It was just, we just had a savings. It was kind of like the no touch savings.
Gotcha.
And granted, we have touched it for things, but that's pretty much what it was the no touch savings.
Okay.
Long-term savings is what you'd call that.
All right. You got to think long and hard to clear the money out of that place or out of that account before it's going to sit there until you have a very good reason to remove it.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. All right. So then what?
So then my wife and I wanted to build a house, and building a house is a really, really bad idea if you want to keep your savings really high. But we did it anyway. So, but the recession hadn't come back yet. So I've always kept my finger on the pulse. And there was an area in the town that we lived in, and I thought if that area ever gets developed, I want to buy a lot down there, over there, not that far. So I drove down the street right as soon as it was put in, and there was a lot at the end of the street, kind of in a cul-de-sac area. And like I said, hadn't bounced back from the recession yet, and we bought the lot that our house sits on today, and we bought it at market price at that time was just market price. But then the housing market started coming back, and it's doing well right now. It took off in value, and I've always done more. I've always felt like I've had two jobs. My schedule is very, very rigid. If you want to be a dad and still get ahead, you got to have a rigid schedule. Mm-hmm. And so I've always done at least a couple of things. A couple of things as in my full-time job and then something extra. And so bought the lot that our house sits on, and I decided, you know what, I'm going to general contract our house. Now, I don't mean physically frame it, but I was what you would call the builder of it.
Yep, the GC.
Right. Yep, yeah, handle all the inspections, and there's so much that goes into building a house, from floodplains to efficiencies to, picking out fixtures and ceiling fans that people fight over. Mm-hmm. That's child's play.
Right.
It's just, it's no big deal doing that stuff.
Gotcha. All right. So you decided to build a house. Where's the property at this point in your head? As far as I need more hunting property to own, is that in play?
It's still in my head, and at this time, it took me about 5 months to general contract the house, and so during that time, I was a zombie, and buying more land was not quite on my mind at that time.
Okay.
So got the house knocked out, and then the appraisal came back and was like, oh my gosh, this was totally worth it. Because I knew what I had into the house.
Right.
And then I saw what it appraised for. And now, and the savings took a hit, of course. Mm-hmm. But, we get in the house, and now we're back into building savings mode.
Okay.
Hard. Building savings mode, building savings back. And I was hunting a place on permission, and gorgeous place. My friend owns it right now, as we speak, but he didn't own it at the time. And so I loved it. It was beautiful. It was good hunting. And I talked to my wife. I'm like, hey, I'd like to buy that piece. You think we could figure out a way to buy it? Mm-hmm. So I hit the owner up, and he didn't want to sell it. So then a few months goes by, and I still loved the piece. I still love it to this day. And I was going to call him. I remember it was a Tuesday night. We're on a bike ride. I'm like, hey, you remember so-and-so? And it's like, yeah. I'm like, I'm going to hit him up again, see if he'll sell it. And I kid you not. We came back from riding bikes with the family that day. Mm-hmm. I had a voicemail on my phone. Hey, Sean, this is so-and-so. Just give me a call when you get a chance. Mm-hmm. I call him back. True story, Jay. True story. I call him back. He's like, hey, I think I'd like to sell you that property. And
wow.
Yeah, it was awesome. I mean, one of God's blessings.
Right.
And so, and it was kind of it was a bummer when he said no, but in hindsight, it's probably good, because we still needed to save some money to figure out how to come up with a down payment.
Right. But it's a heck of a lot better, right, than just saying, he'll never sell it to me. So, or not even having the conversation, because you planted that seed. You were a desirable buyer. Like, you really wanted to own that property, and you just threw it out there, and it stuck in his head as, if I do sell this property, he's going to be the first person I call.
Yep.
For that opportunity.
Yeah. One thing about life, you got to have a willingness to outwork others and a boldness to take that risk. And so, I mean, as long as you're nice about things, mm-hmm. and not just out for yourself, people see through that.
Right.
You and I both know people see right through that. And I'm glad people see through that. But that's how that conversation went. And, made a couple moves, made like some adjustments, I guess. And a couple short months later, bought it.
So you now own?
This was 80 acres.
80 acres of land. Mm-hmm. With the you went in with the confidence, because you owned a couple small pieces of 10 acres.
Yep.
And went in and got it done.
Didn't really make much money on.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, but now it gave me some confidence. I remember the first big deer I shot, and I'm just saying big relative term, whatever. that was a huge confidence booster, as in, oh my gosh, I can do this.
Right.
Same thing with the land. Oh my gosh, I can do this. Same thing with the cars. I can do this.
And when did you buy the 80 acres?
That was in 2013.
13. Okay.
Yeah, 2013-ish, somewhere. It wasn't before 2013.
Okay. All right. So 2013, you buy 80 acres. Same scenario where you have to put down 25% and finance the rest kind of thing?
We went through a bank here that they wanted 35% down of appraised value.
Okay.
So not of purchase value, of appraised value.
Right.
And I had an idea what it was worth, and myself and the landowner talked a little bit, and we agreed on a price, and he sold to us at a really nice price. I mean, he didn't by any means give it away, but sold at a really nice price, and it happened to appraise for a little over what we bought it for.
Okay.
I think, I think what happened was there was a couple comps in the area that just drove up the appraisal price. It didn't necessarily make this one worth a ton more, but there was just a couple comps that happened to just sell high at the time.
Yeah. Okay.
And so it more or less equated to probably still 25%, but the appraisal came back high enough that the bank still got their 35% of appraised value.
Gotcha. Okay. All right.
And this one was more of I'm going to work and improve and go at it with an intention of making this thing better for deer.
Gotcha. All right. So, and this is from your training from the first two pieces of property. Now you say, okay, now I own a lot more acres. I'm going to do something even better with this for the purposes of shooting big deer.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Exactly. So there was food plots. There was some burning
already existing on the property, or this is
no.
Okay. All right.
Work by me.
Work by you. Okay.
Yeah. Oh, and hired work. I didn't have a tractor, and so I needed to pay somebody with a tractor to do some work and cut some stuff down with chainsaw and deer pictures and income. The income was pretty poor at the time, and I could tell the income needed to come up. So instead of it being hay ground that the guy renting on, I didn't think he was paying enough. And so
you're saying that there's income from the property?
Yeah, it was about 50-50 farm, 50 cover, 50 open.
Okay, so you can make money owning this piece of property to help support the cost of owning it through haying or farming of some sort.
Yeah, offset the payment.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, and so what I did was ran an ad on Craigslist looking for a farmer. It was in hay, and I wanted to get it into row crop. Row crop tends to pay better as long as it can be row cropped.
Okay.
And so I got it into a higher income producing row crop ground. Gotcha. Plus it's better for late season deer hunting.
Okay. All right. So when you bought this property, what was your strategy for timber management, farming? Obviously you went and found a row cropper at that point to increase revenue. But what was your idea for the rest of the property to make it a good hunting ground?
Food plots, as in green plots. The main idea I had on this thing was green plots, a late season grain plot, and run the heck out of cameras.
Okay.
Because I want to know what's in the area, what's coming through at all times.
Okay.
I'm telling you, one of the cheapest investments a guy can make into their property is running lots of cameras and keeping a log of all the deer pictures.
Okay.
Because once again, what you're doing is you're reducing risk for yourself and the future, because you're showing that, yes, this area does have good deer.
Gotcha. Did you have to do any timber management on the property as well?
Not this one. This one was full of low quality timber, but it was good bedding timber because it was cedars and hedge.
Gotcha. Okay.
So it was very thick, almost too thick. It was extremely thick. The deer bedded on it really well. Excellent. There's a lot of turkeys and a lot of deer, just a high population in the area. So as far as timber or bedding, it was already good to go.
Okay. And the row crops made an additional food source late season beyond your food plots.
Yep, exactly. And what a guy can do there is you can negotiate with your farmer ahead of time. Hey, I've got, let's just say 40 acres here, and this is what I'm wanting for rent. But I'm willing to cut the rent back to this amount. But if I cut it back to this amount, you have to leave me this much standing grain.
Gotcha.
And of course, they want to farm it. I don't know why a farmer would turn that down, because you're still making it advantageous for him,
right?
Because he's still going to make money on it. And you just want to have some crop left back. And that money that you don't get for having crop left back, like corn, you're probably looking at about $400 an acre for input.
Okay.
But if you don't own the equipment, then your input skyrockets. So, you have to, let's say you want to leave 1 acre and you're charging $150 for rent. So you take that $150 off the rent, plus you're going to have to take $400 off the rent, because he's going to have $400 worth of input costs into putting that corn in.
Right.
But it's still $550 for an acre of corn. It's a lot cheaper than you can do it yourself. And what you're doing is you're giving the deer a place to eat that's not on the neighbors. So that $550 investment that you're just not taking that money in, is worth way more than $550 benefit.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. That makes a lot of sense. And how did you go about hunting this property for the last 5 years?
I didn't even own it 5 years. I don't own the property anymore.
Oh, okay.
But entry and exit, two of the stands were really hard to get in and out of. Really hard to get in and out of if you're super anal about entry and exit.
Right.
But, and then one of them was really easy to get in and out of. So the hard ones to get in and out of, that was kind of like the all day sits, or go in well before dawn, and then who cares on the way out, because your hunt is already over with.
Right.
I'm not saying that's a good idea. It's just kind of the mindset you have to, if you're not going to hunt it all day, that's just kind of what you have to do if you plan on getting out.
Gotcha. Okay.
But that place had great deer on it, still has great deer on it. Shot a really nice 160-inch mainframe 8 on that. It had 170-inch 6x6 on it. It had another 160-inch 8 on it. It just had a deer that was 170, shot on the neighbors. It was kind of a unicorn deer. They had pictures of that deer on it. It was a really good deer place.
Okay. And were you bow hunting or gun hunting?
Just bow hunting. I do late season muzzleloader hunt. Okay. I have in the past few years, but that was pretty much just bow hunting.
Okay.
It's kind of different when you own property. You kind of hunt it different than when you hunt on permission.
Right. I would imagine that would be the case. How did you find yourself hunting differently on the property that you owned versus the one you didn't? Well,
because your deer, you don't really want to run them off, and it's not so much that at least myself, I'm happy if my neighbor shoots a good deer, but you definitely don't want to run off a young deer that has potential. And that's always in the back of your mind. And the deer aren't pets. I get that they're not pets. I mean, they're wild animals. But when you own something, you want to make it as most highly enjoyable for the wildlife. People kind of bash tree huggers, and I'm not quote unquote a tree hugger. But if you look at how I go about habitat things, I kind of am a tree hugger, because I know I want to make habitat phenomenal and great and good for wildlife and good for the trees and increase the value of the trees by doing TSI. So that doesn't really answer your question, but how I went about hunting it was very carefully, still how I go about hunting to this day.
Okay. All right. And what about scent control, gear setup, clothing, boots, all that stuff? What was your approach?
Always showering before, like one stand that I had, for instance, I had to walk all the way across the crop field, or when I hunted on permission, it was alfalfa field. I walk all the way across it. So what I would do is when I get there, I would, the only thing that I wear to the stand that I'm also wearing in my truck is my boxers. My boxers and socks. That's the only thing that I still am wearing when I get in the stand.
Sure.
So get there, change into all my hunting clothes, and then what I needed to do to get in that stand in the morning is I had to walk all the way across this alfalfa field. So I'd pull up in the field drive, and I'd blow out all the deer with my truck just by turning around in the field drive.
Yeah.
And then I'd turn around quick, I'd drive down the hill, I'd throw it in park, and I'd hop out and I'd boogie to the stand.
Gotcha. All right.
Because those deer were already out of. I'd push them out of the field with a truck, and that doesn't really. I mean, you're not blaring the horn and shooting your 6-shooter in the air,
right? But
you're just kind of pushing them off.
Yeah, they'll transfer their location temporarily.
Yeah, and they tolerate it a lot better.
They tolerate it, and then frees you up to get in
Yep.
without making them aware of what's happening.
Yep, exactly. And that's how the last buck that I shot on that property, that is exactly how I went about getting in that stand. And so scent control is always at the forefront of our deer hunting mind, and it's no different for me.
Okay, all right, very cool. Now you unloaded that property,
mm-hmm.
and how long did you?
Yeah.
How long did you own it?
Not very long. Not even a year.
Okay.
And but that was not the intention at all.
Okay.
I mean, that intention on that property was to keep it for quite a while. What ended up happening was I found a property on the other side of the county, still in a good area, and then I wanted to buy it, and so I decided, well, there's only one way that's going to happen. Decided that, well, this one's going to have to get sold. Ended up selling it to a friend of mine, and made a solid amount of money on it. But he got a good deal on it too, and he could probably sell that thing for more than what I made on it. But in the meantime, as the property, I call on this property that I found out through the grapevine that could be bought. Call the guy. He's like, yeah, it can be bought at this price. And I'm like, okay. So then I'm like, don't do anything with it. If you don't hear from me and you find somebody to buy it, call me. So a couple weeks go by and get a purchase agreement on the 80 acres. And I call him back and he goes, oh, I just signed a purchase agreement. Literally, this not even 3 weeks went by. True story.
Right.
And call him back and he's like, oh, I just accepted a purchase agreement on it a couple days ago.
Yep.
And I'm like, oh no.
Right.
You've got to be kidding me. And I've already got a signed purchase agreement on this one to sell it. I don't really want to go back on it.
Right.
So now it was frantic mode because I wanted to 1031 tax exchange, which in simple terms, that just means deferring your taxes until you decide you're going to take all the profit and just put it in your own personal account.
Right.
So set up a 1031, frantically looked for a property, and took time off work and a couple thousand miles on my truck and found one.
Okay.
Found one, and I want to say found that one in 2014.
Okay.
Ish. Yeah, it was about 2014. And that one was 280 acres.
Wow. So you've gone from 10 to 10 plus 13 to none to 80 to
280.
280.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. And that one had to, that one hurt buying that one. That one was pretty painful.
Right. I'm sure the price tag is going up at this point.
Yeah, substantially.
Right.
But you know what? It's always been an investment that I can hunt.
Right.
That's always, I always think about that. This is an investment that I can hunt. It's my non-liquid savings account. Right.
Gotcha. So do you end up buying the 280?
Yep. Own it right now. Thinking about selling it. I'm going to take a risk selling it though. It is so good hunting. It's really good. I mean, in the past handful of years, 174, 180, and a 183.
It's good.
Yeah, it's real good.
So does the workload increase as the acreage increases? Does the cost of carrying it increase, both in mortgage dollars and in upkeep?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, it does. I mean, just to have a farm, you have to, you got to pay your property taxes and pay your mortgage and deal with the NRCS and FSA. And granted, you could just let it sit there. There's as long as you paid your bills, you could just let it sit there.
Okay.
But that's just not how I roll.
Okay. And
I like to make things as good as they can be. Just like as humans, we want to be the best Jay God designed you to be.
Right.
I want to make this farm the best farm it can be.
Right. And tell us what is it? NS
NRCS. That's the local government. It's your county office. It's Natural Resource Conservation Service.
Okay.
So that's who you deal with if you're talking about conservation reserve programs, or and then you're dealing with the FSA office, which is Farm Service Agency. They're usually in the same building. That's your local office when you're dealing with a crop plan. Like I'm putting in corn, and these are going to be the waterways, and I'm registering. I'm letting you know that it's corn this year, and it'll be beans next year, because what you're doing is you're creating a crop history. Because if you want to put something in CRP, you have to have crop history. You can't just have a weed field and go to the local office and be like, hey, you need to pay me to put this in CRP. It doesn't work that way. You have to have the crop history there to show that you've been working the land and using the land for crops.
Okay. And you want to have the crops there so you get into the CRP program.
Yeah.
And the CRP program is they pay you to not farm, as I understand.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they give you a cost share to plant it, and that's what I did with this farm. Is it was cropped, and I wanted to get it into CRP, but not all of it.
Okay.
CRP income tends to be a little bit more than you can get out of rent, which some farmers don't like, because it's more enticing to put into CRP than to let a farmer rent it.
Right.
But the contract is usually 10 or 15 years long. So then by the time you get to the end of the contract, typically the CRP rent is just a hair below what you could actually rent it for.
Okay.
So it usually ends up evening out. The nice thing about CRP is you get paid for your habitat.
Right.
Rather than that habitat only being there 5 months a year and then coming out and now the habitat's gone.
Gotcha. Okay. And were there other income revenue producing activities on that 280 beforehand, or you're still in design?
No, the only revenue on this farm was crop ground.
Okay. So it's crop ground.
Yep.
Gotcha.
So now that is not the case. Now it is CRP income, and then the crop ground income is really, it's pretty much non-existent, because there's only, there's 18 acres there of croppable ground, and farmer farms 16 of it. But what I do in lieu of rent is he has to leave me standing grain in lieu of rent, and he can harvest the rest.
Okay. So after the 280 is CRP'd out, does the income, is it a loss every year, I guess is the question. Do you end up actually losing money to own the property, or does it break even?
Well, the CRP, that has a substantial amount of, that takes a big cut out of the mortgage payment.
Okay.
But it does not cash roll itself.
Okay. All right.
It still costs me money every month, but it does not fully cash roll itself.
Okay. Makes it easier to swallow, but it's not 100%.
Oh, yeah. It makes it way easier to swallow, because the CRP income is almost $28,000.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So now, since I'm telling you that it still doesn't cash roll itself, imagine what kind of loan that is.
Right. Right. Okay. So that's 20, and that's 28,000 a year in CRP income. Okay.
Yep.
So you're looking at 20. So it's you get more than $2,000 a month. So your mortgage, if you're still paying out, is going to be more than that.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly. And it's very, another one of those mortgage calculator things. And if you want your payment to go down, you just got to put down more money.
Good point.
Or find a smaller property.
Right. But it's always locked in. The value in the house, or not the house, the land itself will appreciate or depreciate based off of market conditions, and it will ride independently of how much you owe. Like, they're not connected in any way.
Right, exactly. One of the biggest things I like about land is, first of all, if you just let it sit there, you're still looking at, let's just say, a 6%, give or take a percent. You're still looking at a 6% appreciation. It might be 5, might be 7, just depending on the year. But you can also force appreciation by making it better.
Right.
And that's probably one of the biggest ways you can get appreciation out of a land. Is this thing it wasn't really what you'd call a deer farm. It was a crop farm with about 110 acres of timber.
Right.
Since then, I have put CRP in. You can get different kinds of CRP programs. And this one, I think I could have 10 grass seeds per square foot. So I spent extra money on Canlo switchgrass, Cave and Rock switchgrass, big blue stem, and Indian grass, which are all late warm season grasses. And those stand up better against snow. And it costs more money though, but it was cost shared. So they'll give, I don't remember what the cost share was. It was like 75% of the seed to plant it they paid for, but I went with a more expensive seed blend and worked with a seed company to give me a better seed blend, so it would stand up better in snow. So I had bedding in the winter, not just in the timber.
Right.
I have a turnip plot, I have a grain plot, I have 3 clover plots. These are all things that I've put in. Dozer work. I have a buddy with a dozer. He's worked on the drive. He's worked on a creek crossing. And these things all cost money, but the net gain is there. For every dollar you put in a property, it's kind of nice to think in the back of your head, I hope I'm getting, $1.10 gain out of this dollar I'm spending, or this hour I'm spending here. Whatever your time may be worth, you consider it's worth, you're getting more gain out of it.
Right.
So now, I did a recent TSI project because there's a slug of walnuts on there and there's quite a few oaks too. And that's twofold. For one, it lets your crop trees, your high value trees, grow twice as fast, and the deer bedding and wildlife habitat that it creates is phenomenal. So this farm is nothing like what it was when I bought it. It's like a killer deer farm now. I mean, awesome, with a ton of income and giant deer.
Right. Gotcha. So it sounds like as you learn your property and you learn what you can do with your property, you could make it even a higher revenue producing property than it once was when you first bought it, with proper planning. And the other thing that kind of pops into my head is that if you were to own this property for a certain number of years, understanding that if there were no bubble and you had an average appreciation of 6% per year, using the power of 72, which says that the value will double every so many years if you divide it by the interest rate that it receives.
Yep.
If you own this property 12 years, it would be worth twice what you paid for it in 12 years.
Yeah. And think about if you pay the property off and let's say you pay it off in 15 years. I mean, you have a stack of net worth sitting there.
Right. Yep. So in 12 years, if you bought it for $250,000, it's worth $500,000 12 years later. Or if you bought it for $500,000, it's worth $1 million. It's an extra $500,000 in value. You can sell that, have $500,000 that you can now roll into another property, for example.
Right. That's exactly why the whole don't wait to buy real estate. Buy real estate and wait.
Right.
People sometimes people stand proudly on, I could have bought that property back in 1992 for $600 an acre. And now you want to sell me that property for $3,000 an acre? Well, first of all, you can't argue with somebody that thinks like that. So you're just like, yep, that's right. You got it, buddy. But you got to think about it. I mean, think of all the work you've done. Think about just the appreciation that it's gained on its own. And you know what? It's not going down any. People talk about, I'm going to wait for property to come down a little bit. Well, that happened on commodity driven ground.
Right.
That is a very feasible option. On deer hunting ground, really the only way, and it can happen, the only couple ways it's going to go down in price is if the deer get wiped out, which can happen. So you got to be wise about where you buy, or a huge hit to the economy.
Right.
So as long as you buy right, you don't have to typically worry about that. If you're paying twice market value, then the economy and the deer herd are going to make a huge difference if there's an impact there.
Right. Gotcha. Fascinating story from just a dream when you're a kid to owning 280 acres of well-managed huntable deer land today.
Yeah, and anybody can do it. I am absolutely no genius at all. Not even close. We could take an IQ test, and it's beyond likely that many of your listeners are going to score higher than me on an IQ test. And I'm okay with that.
Right.
But what I will do is there's so many people out there that also have a work ethic. And I'm one of those guys that I might not have the best work ethic out of everybody, but I have a better work ethic than most.
Right.
I have a friend, he owns thousands of acres. He didn't even buy a house before he bought his first farm. He lived in a studio apartment, owned $1 million farm, and he lived in a studio apartment. And to this day, I think him and a couple brothers, they have about $3,000 or 3,000 acres of land.
Phenomenal.
And he's only a few years older than me.
Right. That's awesome.
It can be done. It's just a matter of, and I love helping people do it. I mean, it's just,
right.
I'm crazy about land.
That's cool. What a great blueprint to make this happen for yourself. All
yeah.
right.
And this is coming from a shower after work guy. There's two kinds of jobs, not white collar and blue collar. There's the shower before work job and there's the shower after work job.
That's a good point, man. It's a good point. I think we've got a lot of listeners who are the shower after work kind of guys and gals.
Yeah, and they can do it.
Right.
And it's fun. You know what? That's another thing. You can force appreciation and it's fun. Paper investments, although they've done really well, like the S&P, what did it do in 2017? Did it do 22, 24%? Phenomenal investment. Phenomenal. Right. And it's awesome getting those sheets in the mail, seeing what you got, but it's not as fun as deer hunting.
Very true. Very true. All right, Sean, you got to tell us a deer story from one of your pieces of property and let us know how it went in detail so we can kind of live it too.
The current farm that I own, I was hunting. It was November 9th. I remember rut days like the back of my hand. So it was November 9th. I was sitting up by the cabin in a stand and I could see across the farm and there was a bunch of deer running over across the farm in this area. And I said, I got to get out of the stand. But in order for me to get out of the stand, I got to hop out, walk a half mile plus, gosh, it was probably 3/4 of a mile back to my truck and go and get in this other stand. So I go back, I boogie back to my truck, hop my truck, go and drive through the gate to the other end of the farm. And I'm on my way and it's another half mile back to the stand I want to get back to. So I'm walking back there and I look across and I got my camera with me, like picture, not trail camera, not phone camera, but like a nicer high zoom camera. And I look across it's where the creek runs. On the other hill, there's a deer that I was in there to shoot. I called him the mess. He literally looked like a mess of, nice. Yeah, he was a mess of antlers. There's just points everywhere. I think he had 22 scoreable points, but I look across and there he stands with a doe about a half a mile from me. And I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. So I'm like, well, I'm here. I got the day off. Going to go and hunt anyway. So I go and I crawl in the stand and I'm on my phone so much things darn near dead because I'm so bored. And the deer were coming by, but not. I had my eye on one deer in particular, and that was him. And I knew I had bumped him off, so I didn't really think that I was going to get a crack at him. And there's hardly any breeze. I need a south breeze. There's hardly any breeze. I'm starting to get hot. So by this time, I'm sitting in a short sleeve shirt, no gloves on, no face mask on, baseball cap, and I got white and purple socks sitting on my footrest of my stand because my feet are so hot. But I've refused to get out of the stand. So at 1, and I ended up shutting my phone off because I almost ran the battery out. And it was about 1:45 in the afternoon. I had a doe come by, and I'm kind of dozing in and out. I had a doe come by, and I'm like, oh boy, there's a doe. And she's right in front of me. So I sit really still, and I slide my feet back behind my knee boots. So I don't have these big white, purple feet sticking out there. And I look behind her. I kid you not, the mess is right behind her.
Gotcha.
I'm like, oh my gosh. I tip my head down so my bill is kind of covering my face. and I draw back, and he comes in front of me, and I stick him. And keep in mind, I had a buddy bugging me to get out of the stand. Let's go for lunch, because he was having a slow day too. And I'm like, no, I'm not getting out. And I stick him, and he goes running up the hill, and he tips over. And he was a beast, man. Had 6 6/8 inch bases. I think he had 43 inches of mass. And that was at 1:45 in the afternoon, November 9th. It took everything I had to load that deer in the back of my truck. It took me multiple tries, and I work out every day. I mean, I like lift weights, and I don't mean like cardio lift weights like my wife does. I'm talking like, I lift heavy weight kind of guy.
Right.
And it was a brute. It had 31-inch neck. It was a big deer. And I almost got out of the stand to go for lunch, and I almost screwed it up being half naked in my tree, thinking the day was shot.
Right. Wow. The mess.
Yep.
The mess. The beast. Awesome. Yeah. Great story, man.
Appreciate it. Yeah, it was a fun hunt.
All right, let me hit you with 10 rapid fire questions here.
Yeah, shoot.
All right, what's your number one hunting tip of all time?
Think. That's probably the biggest thing I used to screw up on, is just, do hunt with intention. Hunt like you mean it.
Right.
I try to go in there and make every minute the best run. Like, run the crap out of cameras and do it with intent.
Nice. All right, we all have these things that kind of drive us crazy if we don't have it with us during the hunt. What's that one thing for you?
My phone.
Your phone.
It's because it's my watch.
Right.
It's my watch, and it's my contact if my wife needs anything.
Absolutely, man. Yeah, communication device is a safety device, but also
right.
tells you when the sun's going down. Right. What's your biggest pet peeve in life?
Excuses.
I like that.
Hands down, excuses.
Love that one. How old are you today?
What is the date today, by the way?
Today, it's the 28th.
I turned 37 2 days ago.
Okay. All right. So you're 37 years old. What would you tell the 16-year-old Sean, knowing what you know today about life?
You can do it. Try harder.
Okay.
You can do it.
All right. You meet a stranger at a hunting convention somewhere in the world, and they ask you what you do for a living. What do you tell them? I
sell dirt, and I work for a utility company. I have my real estate license. I sell farms, so
nice.
I help people buy them too.
Gotcha. Very cool. What did you have for breakfast this morning?
Power food. 3 eggs over easy, salt and pepper, and a cup of tea.
Beautiful. I like it.
Yeah, no carbs, man.
No carbs. You get a billboard on the side of the highway. It's a blank canvas, so it can say anything you want. What would you put on it?
As cheesy as it sounds, I would put on it, "You are loved." There's so many people out there with poor attitudes and don't think very highly of themselves, don't think they can do it, don't think anybody cares about them. That's not true.
Nice.
You are loved.
Very cool. If I say the word successful to you, who's the first person that pops into your head and why?
Multiple people. Friend of mine, Bill, he's a broker. Another friend of mine, Bill, he's in the industry, deer hunting industry. A friend of mine, Charles, he's the one that has a studio apartment with his brothers. I don't know it all, but I can find somebody with the answer, and those are my mentors.
Nice. What's a day in your life look like?
Very rigid. I'm a schedule freak. My wife's even worse than me. I wake up about 6 o'clock, and first thing I do is I cook my eggs and get my cup of tea warmed up, sit down, say my prayer for the day, and work on emails for my for real estate. And then I go to a 9 to 5. Well, then my kids get up, get them breakfast, and tell them goodbye, head out the door, do my 9 to 5, work out for an hour every day over lunch, check more emails, get back on text, come home, get home about 5. Family time from 5 until about 8:30. And then about that time, I'm back on my laptop doing more real estate stuff until about 11. Hop in the shower, read, go to bed, back up at 6.
Very cool. All right. And then finally, the last of the 10 questions. What's a deer hunting day in your life look like?
That's rigid too. I wake up about 3:30, 4 o'clock, hop in the shower, scrub down, wolf down some food. During deer season, it's eat whatever I want time. I starve myself from carbs at pretty much any time except for deer season. Mm-hmm. And if it's a dawn dark, I'll get in the stand about 15 minutes before shooting time. I will hunt all day. And now I've gotten smart and gotten one of those little chargers you can buy on Amazon for your phone.
Yeah, sure.
So I have one of those and take a little bit of food with me and a Diet Mountain Dew in the stand, get out, drive home. Most of the time I get home before my kids go to bed, hang out with the kids for a while, and do it again the next day. Dawn to darks are pretty common for me during the rut.
Okay. All right. Very good. All right. Those are the 10 rapid fire questions. Sean,
awesome.
I got to say, man, this has been very enlightening and an interesting story of that I think anybody can do based off of where you came from and what you worked hard to achieve. And I think
so too.
Anybody can own their own piece of property when it comes down to it.
Yes, you can. You got to start somewhere. You know, the poorest plan executed in a haphazard manner is still 100 times better than the best plan never executed.
Right. Words of wisdom right there. Very nice.
Yeah.
So let's say, for example, we didn't cover enough in our hour and a half that we spoke about owning deer property.
Yeah.
What if there are other questions that come out of this and people have need more answers? Where can we find you?
I love helping people. IowaLandman.com, Iowa spelled out, landman.com, or Sean, SEAN, at IowaLandman.com.
Very cool, man. Well, I appreciate you coming on the show and stepping in the studios here and filling us full of great knowledge that I think lots of other people will be contemplating now that they've heard this show.
Jay, I have to tell you, the pleasure was all mine. I really appreciate it. It was a lot of fun talking to you.
I appreciate Sean Asada stopping by the studios to fill us in on his journey that he's been on, buying his own piece of hunting heaven on a shoestring budget. Definitely takes financial discipline, a plan, dedication, but as you can see, Sean did it. So you could probably figure it out too if you follow his model. You got to have some drive and be willing to sacrifice those little day-to-day things in order to have that one piece if you're living paycheck to paycheck. So I appreciate Sean once again for coming on the show. Dusty, do we have a Chubby Tines tip of the week?
Yeah, Jay, I've got a tip of the week.
The Chubby Tines tip of the week is sponsored by Morse's Sporting Goods. Firearms, used firearms, bows, used bows, located at 85 Kentucky Falls Road in Hillsborough, New Hampshire. Give Jim a call at 603-464-3444, morsessportinggoods.com. Your dollars go further in New Hampshire. There's no sales tax. Morse's Sporting Goods.
Getting into the shed season here, and it's that time to be out there looking for them drop antlers. And I tell you, a lot of times people are lazy. It's amazing that they just walk the trails and the open areas that easy accessible. And I think that you're going to broaden your collection of antlers if you really take the time and dig into them thick woods and the thickets and them real heavy covered fields where you can walk through. And, you know, there's times where I've been down on my hands and knees just to cut through a 10, 15 yard section to get to the other side. But you really got to play it as if, you know, a shed hunter's lazy. You push yourself to get through them thick areas and dig into it. Get down into thickets. Get into that tall CRP fields that's real thick and it's not very good footing and it's a struggle to walk through. That's where your best odds are, you know, not only public but private also. You got to really dig in and find them sheds.
So you're saying it's going to get a little rugged, a little dirty.
Oh yeah, you got to get down in there and dig for them. Got to go where nobody else wants to go.
Right. That's good. That's a good tip. Dusty, where can we find you when you're not hanging out here in the studios with me?
Shoot me an email, dusty@bigbuckregistry.com. You can look me up on Instagram and Twitter @ChasingAntler, Facebook.com/Chubby Tines Outdoors. Jay, where can the people reach out to you when you're not on the mic?
Likewise, you can shoot me an email, jay@bigbuckregistry.com, and you can visit us on Facebook, facebook.com/bigbuckregistry. We're also on Twitter, which is twitter.com/bigbuckregistry. We're also on Instagram, instagram.com/bigbuckregistry, and YouTube, which is youtube.com/bigbuckregistry. On YouTube, you can listen to all of our podcasts in their entirety. As far as videos are concerned, it's a boring video, but the audio content is there, so you can actually listen to our podcast. You can also listen to all of our live shows that we've done on Thursday nights when we do them, and we've gone back and re-interviewed a lot of our previous guests we had on the show just to put a face to a voice. Let's put it that way. You can always listen to our show on other places as well, not just YouTube. We're found on iTunes, Spotify, iHeartRadio, TuneIn Radio, Stitcher, and Blueberry. And if you would like to submit a buck to our page for consideration and be featured on our page in front of 250,000 diehard deer hunting fans, all you have to do is go to bigbuckregistry.com/mybuck, and all of the instructions will be right there. I think that's pretty much everywhere we're at. I think that's a wrap, Dusty.
That's a whole lot of big buck, Jay.
Sure is. I'm Jay Scott.
I'm Dusty Phillips.
And this is the Big Buck Registry's Deer Hunting Podcast. We'll see you next week.